Morale.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
That's major. Some of these are social media. Some of them are electrical engineer. They won't get them. No, I'm good. I can just sit here and take these. Is it all there? No, I'm good. I'm good. Don't worry about it.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming to this panel which we are calling Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. And the idea is for all of you who are wondering whether this is, if cyber is a field that you want to get into or stay in, or anything, any questions that you might have for established cyber professionals, this is the time and this is the place. So I think we're just going to get started. I will first ask each one of the panelists to introduce themselves briefly and to give a short intro into their journey, how they got to their current positions. And then we switch the tables, and it's for you to ask them whatever it is that you want to know. This is part of Deloitte's Women in Cyber initiative, so you can also ask them about anything related to gender equality or things like that. So they've been briefed. So maybe Chelsea, would you like to start?
Well, thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you to Deloitte, and I'm very happy to be part of the Women in Cyber initiative, so thank you for the leadership on that. My name is Chelsea Slack, and I'm the Deputy Head of the Cyber Defense Section with the international staff at NATO. And I fell into cyber defense completely by accident. I have a background in international relations and political science. And before I was working more on conflict prevention and stabilization efforts. You could say that there's now parallels to what we're trying to do in cyberspace and building stability. But in essence, I was about to submit my proposal for my master's thesis. I was very nervous about applying. And I got stuck coming home for Christmas at the airport in Frankfurt. I was finalizing my research proposal, thinking about what I wanted to do. And I sat next to someone who was coming back from a conflict zone. And we were stuck at the airport, so we started talking. I said, what are you up to? I said, just finalizing my research proposal. I'm going to do my master's. He said, what are you writing your thesis on? I said, well, I'm thinking about stabilization, reconstruction. He said, I'm going to be very blunt. We're Canadian. We like, we're quite nice and around the thing. We're not too blunt. So he said, I'm just going to tell you that it's a really important topic, and I'm sure you could write something interesting. But I think you need a new topic. So literally, I was about to submit my master's application, really nervous, and I was told by a complete stranger that I needed a new topic. So I went home for Christmas, then I came back, and my first week back in the office, I was an intern at NATO at the time. My boss said, we need native speakers because we're writing a new policy on cyber defense at NATO. I said, well, I don't really know much on the cyber issue, but I do have a background in policy and writing and international relations. He said, perfect. He set me up with some mentors who knew everything about cyber. And then within a week, I was like, I'm going to write my thesis on cyber. So as you can see, really a background in international relations and political science, a background also in policy and analysis, which was really useful. And now, over the last 8 years, I've been working on building up the knowledge specifically in the cyber domain. And in essence, that's what I got to where I am.
Great story. Thanks so much. Martin, you want to second?
Sure.
Hello, my name is Martin Dion. I'm a Global Chief Information Security Officer at PSK Group. I also manage the consultancy practice and the delivery organization of this cybersecurity company who operates out of Switzerland. I started my career pretty young. Actually, the way I really got into it was by breaking into system, but back then there were no classes that teach you about hacking, so it was really a quest for learning and always the puzzle and the challenge of trying to find my way into any sorts of system. But basically, back in the days, it was an open field because nothing was structured, honestly. And at one point in time, it turned out that I need to make a living out of it because it was the only thing I was really caring about. So it turned into my e-sport in a way. And I started working with a lot of private organizations, and I was confronted very quickly with the fact that I needed to explain what I was able to find to business people. So I moved into HEC to better learn about the business language. But still I was stuck because the business side very quickly, although you might have the language, effectively they make their decision based on risks. So, and I didn't have this lingo, so I moved into operational risk management, which was amazingly boring, to be honest, but very useful in the sense that you can start helping executives weight what are the potential value at stake and what needs to be done and how much it's going to cost and so on. But still I was not satisfied at that point in time, so I moved more into to build a capacity to answer one question. Why are you doing this? So I moved into criminology. And from there I was able to better paint a picture to the various people who are building cybersecurity measures or need to invest into cybersecurity measures by answering why they're doing this, how much it's going to cost us, what's the impact on business, and obviously the technical route I had on me to actually complete the loop. That led me to work everywhere in the world with fascinating people, starting with originally the intelligence service, moving into South America and the Caribbean when it was, let's say, the warmer region. And then after 9/11, obviously, sort of coming back home and operating more on the European, let's say, Moscow, South Africa axis, spending a lot of time in the Middle East, from Jordan to Morocco, trying to help safeguard whatever asset the government and the corporation were trying to protect in those regions, which made me move to Switzerland, a country I've been in for the last 14 years. I forgot to mention I'm originally from Montreal, so it's Buchanan. And I've been here ever since, now being part of the political science program as well. At the University in England, I focus again on intelligence and national security, because in terms of emerging risks and the social change of technology, and that technology, how much it impacts every strata of our society and across all culture, across all genders, and really across all generations, it's becoming more and more important to be able to build bridges with the various policymakers, because they're making decisions, and from our technical standpoint, without necessarily realizing how quickly technology evolves versus how slowly the policymaking process is. So that's what I can help you with the past 20-something years.
Thanks, Martin. And I think it's already, just with the two first of you, really interesting to see that you have both very different journeys and also very different current roles. So just to give an idea of all the different paths and different things that you can be doing in this field, which is really great. So I'm very interested now in what you're going to say, Bastien, on your journey and your role.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Nadila, for the invitation. So I'm Bastien Warner. I'm a PhD student at the University of Lausanne in cyber defense, and I also collaborate with the Federal Department of Defense in Switzerland in the field of cyber operation. I also fell into cyber by accident. Of course, when I was a little bit younger, I was in my room doing some nerdy stuff. In particular, tried to copy a game from the end 90s and sell it in the behind the school, let's say so. And I remember I had once a call from a parent from another student who said to me, you know what you're doing is illegal. I said, okay, yeah, sorry. So I'm not very proud about that, but just to show that I begin there like that. After I also started with background in law and economics, and I did a bachelor at the University of Geneva in business administration. And there I remember there was a kind of old professor for me. He was like 64-year-old, 2 years before retirement, and he was teaching IT organization. What's that? And so I followed his course. It was really the beginning of the integration of IT into a company. And he has a second course who was IT security. So I said, okay, let's follow this course. And it was very interesting for me. So I did my first bachelor thesis on human failure in information security at the end of 2000. And after that, I found in the newspaper, so at this time we were reading newspaper at university, not computer, newspaper, and I found an announcement for a master at University of Lausanne in IT, crime, security, and law. So I followed this master, and there I'll also try to explore another field where it was competitive intelligence. So I did my master thesis in competitive intelligence. And after I worked a couple of years in a competitor to life, and I was in the IT field for banks as an auditor and security consultant, when I suddenly realized that I want to research more into cyber fields because it was a huge gap, I think, in some field, in some very niche. And so I came back to the university and I started my PhD. Yeah, and what's really for me important is that there is truly no path for cyber, right? And you can just jump in the train anywhere, anytime. And as soon as you're in the train, you can move from car to car to find really what's interesting for you. And it's, yeah. Let's see where the train goes.
Yeah, great analogy. Thank you so much, everybody. So as you can see, very different specializations and roles. So does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I have to prepare myself. But I'll leave the floor to you. Anybody?
Are you shy?
They don't bite. Okay, so maybe I'll start. Question to Chelsea. What do you think today is the most important technical and soft skill that students should be focusing on if they want to consider a career in cyber?
Well, we spoke a little bit yesterday about some of the key things that are required to do the job, or at least in my perspective for this job. And that's really because the field is so multidisciplinary, you really have to collect the pieces of the puzzle if you want. And those pieces can come from different places, be it from industry, from academia, from different governments. So you really and different partners, so not always the same partners. So having that analytical ability to see the bigger picture, to pull in the pieces of information that you need, and then to present that. So the first area I would say is really the awareness and knowing where to get those pieces of the puzzle so that you can figure out how to put them together. That's one, to the analytical aspect. A second is, as we've seen, the technical and the political, or the technical and the strategic. So the communication skills to take that technical information, that analysis, and then to translate that into something for the senior decision makers. So that when they speak to their peers or when they speak publicly, it's understandable in that term. So the communication ability to be able to tailor your message to different audiences is really important so that you get your point across, that analysis gets through. And then third, I would say, is the ability to be flexible and to be adaptable, given that you are working in such a multidisciplinary field. And that's something, especially working in a multinational organization where we have 29 different countries who come to the table every week and sit together, is something really important, flexibility and that adaptability. So in short, the analytical capacity, the communications skills, both in tailoring your message, so in drafting that message, and then the kind of flexibility and adaptability for the environment we work in.
And going back then to what Dustin just said, it doesn't seem like that's a specific curriculum at university that would bring, so there are many ways that you would gain those three skills. Would you agree? Great. And I'll just continue until somebody raises their hand. Oh, there you go.
I can ask. So this competition is different than other cyber competitions in that it's policy focused on the soft set of skills that involve the technical knowledge. Looking at the private sector, however, most of the people who I've seen in roles such as Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Systems Officer are coming from purely technical backgrounds. Where are the entry-level positions for people with the technical knowledge and the soft skills into the workforce?
Yeah, sure. So, to me, cybersecurity today more than ever before is not only about technical skills, even within the organization. Actually, if we step back and we start thinking about the last 20-something years, the cybersecurity industry collectively failed. We've been systematically investing more and more money into it, and we're having more and more problems. So there's an issue right there. And two things might be answering some of the questions we have open. We have a plethora of technology. So it's not because we don't know how to do it. Plus, we have a plethora of standards. There was a question yesterday in the auditorium by a Norwegian professor about, do we need more standards? My short answer is no. The problem is not that we don't have standard or we don't have technology. The problem is that we don't adapt them to business. So circling back to your question, any technical person who's interested in security will find a position. But the question is, how does he grow up in that position? How does he move up the ladder? And it's certainly not by becoming more and more skilled from a technical standpoint. It's by understanding the strategy and being able to connect that with business objective. One of the comments I was giving back to the student yesterday was that although you might have a sound plan from a policy standpoint, one of the issues I see is you want to force the private sector to be involved in your solution. What do you give them? What's in it for them? Well, that question is the primary question you're faced with all the time when you deal with a board, when you're trying to sell a plan, when you're trying to implement something in the cybersecurity field. If you're not able to explain what's the business value of what you're trying to do, or what's the business asset you're trying to protect, whatever you're doing, even though you're the best technical person in the world, will not fly through. So I think that you need to be able to understand what is digital transformation, how does it liaise back to the organization, what is the value, is that it? Because you cannot contain it. It's going to move forward. From a societal perspective, it's going to move forward. We cannot contain it. So we're just creating and are faced with more and more issues from a cyber perspective. So if you cannot connect those dots, moving back to your comment on analysis, technical people will fail, will continue to fail.
There was one.
A rebuttal, I guess, since I'm the one that set the standards. In different industries, I'm involved in different industries. My son, he's an electrician, and he's an electrician from Sweden, but he can work in Norway because of the standards. And he's able to do things, and buildings don't burn down because we have standards for classification and certification. Right? And it's because at that level we have those types of skills rather than the consulting skills. So in a sense, we see that going on. We need that. We need an industrialization of the security problem.
I would agree when you're dealing with something that is static, and when you're putting a wire in a building, it's going to be there for years, and the conditions around it won't change or will be contained. Hence, the standard is necessary to make sure that those wires are good enough for the type of building in a given region. But cybersecurity is very dynamic. It is attached to different priorities. It is exposed to different contexts, different weather. We had standards in cybersecurity for the last 20 years, yet it doesn't work. And the reason, from our standpoint, is that they are not adapted, or people just try to apply the standard instead of adapting it to the business, and actually it doesn't yield results.
I think what we have is a cybersecurity industrial complex. I think that's what we have.
just conscious of time and the fact that there were other hands raised, maybe we can continue this discussion afterwards. Would you like to go? And you'll be
So,
next.
Martin, I had this discussion, I'm sure you've had it a million times, and as is most of the people in this room. You brought up the topic, so I got to ask, what are the tools? And the topic is this: how do we incentivize or encourage CEOs and boards of company to admit that they've been the victim of a cyber attack when they have to, adjudicate that with shareholders when the stock price falls, so that knowledge is spread across industries and other corporations? What are the tools that our governments are going to be able to do, or that private industry themselves are going to be able to do, to encourage that kind of behavior?
I think laws that basically derive public shaming is one thing that works for a little while to create a certain level of awareness, but ultimately it's about being able to continue delivering against your business goals. People, even in cybersecurity, focus, in my view, too much about the fact that it's about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. At the core, CEO care about availability and continuity of service. So distancing yourself from the discussion of we might lose data, we might get hacked into, and focusing more on the production chain might go down will create a more productive dialogue, in my view.
I would also add that I think the awareness piece is really important, especially at the senior decision-making level. And that's something, for example, in the public sector that we've been working on a lot. And one of the most effective ways to do it is challenges like this in terms of table talks. Getting your senior decision makers, whether they're private or public sector, to sit down, walk them through a scenario, and point blank ask for their analysis. What do you think this is? Is this just a technical glitch that the Wi-Fi is not working? But you have an operation that's going on, and now the GPS is affected. So is this part of a broader campaign now? What's your media strategy? Are you going to go to the public? How are you coordinating? What advice do you need? So we've been seeing, especially a lot more awareness raising at the senior decision maker level, recognizing it is a political issue when your senior leadership has to go and speak to the public about what's going on and put them at ease in a sense. So in any event, what we've been trying to do, at least including at NATO, is a lot of awareness raising through practical activity, to walk people through scenarios, very simple scenarios. And what would you do? What advice would you give? What advice do you need in order to arrive at a decision? So that's been really key, and there's been a lot of work going on precisely to try to raise that awareness.
There's a question over here.
Thank you very much for a very interesting panel. My name is Angel Drag. I'm from the Permanent Mission of Bulgaria here in Geneva, the UN. Before that, I have been working 10 years in the private sector in the area of risk management. So I have the two, the private sector and now the international sector point of view. And I just wanted briefly to move the focus of the discussion, because we're talking about cyber, a new area, relatively new area. We're talking also about the future. We're talking about public policy, decision making, and so on. So probably the natural question that comes to mind, at least to my mind, is what about education? What about educating the young? We heard how Sebastian started and how he started. So what is your view on what should states do in order to prepare the future generations? Because basically, from what I hear from you, cyber is an area that is reserved only for bachelor, master, and PhD, but it's not where it starts, and it's not where the effective population is. So,
Maybe as an academic, do you want to start at least with an answer to that?
Yes, if I understand your question well, it's also not at the academic level, but also like the child. So, a lot of provocative, I will say, today if you find someone that tell you he's a cyber expert, don't trust him. It's not possible, right? You cannot be an expert in cyber, because for me as an academic, cyber is really transversal. So you're an expert in international law related to cyber. You might be an expert in defense related to cyber. And so for me, yeah, I mean, you have two schools now. There is one school saying we need to continue to do what we do now, so teach mathematics, teach French, teach whatever, philosophy and whatever. And as soon as the young are in the teenagers, they can start to specialize in it. But you have also another school now who are saying that we need to stop teaching math, but more we need to teach algorithm. I'm not a mathematician, I have no idea what the difference. But that's a very strong impulse from technical school. In my personal point of view, I think that it's important to have a general knowledge on everything, because once again, cyber is everywhere. But of course, maybe the method of teaching need to change. I said it a couple of years ago, we were always a newspaper. In Switzerland, it was a 20-minute and the Matin Bleu, right? And today, you have all computer in the room. And what does the student do during the class? I don't know, they can do whatever they want, but still they pass the exam. So I think we maybe need to rethink the task. But to came back to my metaphor about the train, I think what's really important for young people, and that's what all the questions I get in my classes at the university is, like, where do I start? Just pick one, start somewhere. You can start on the technical level, you can start on the political level, whatever. But I think it's really important to have at least a duality. So if you're in the political policy level, you need to at least understand how the technique works. And the opposite is also true. If you're an engineer, you need to understand how public policy goes or the economy goes. And for me, that's really key. Not today, I found the people who cannot find a job, I mean young people, it's because they are so focused in one area, but they are not at least two capabilities strong.
Yeah, I agree, and I would rebalance. Having been exposed to a lot of students who came out of graduate school or even undergrad in Switzerland, I've noticed that most of the schools here are ultra specialized. For example, if you go to engineering school, you only study engineering. You don't have business classes, you don't have project management classes. That drives me crazy, because one of the first things you'll get involved in is in a project. So if you don't understand the mechanic of the group and the team you're part of, how can you succeed even if you're the best engineer? So I agree with you. You need to understand also something different. But going more specifically to your question, there is a lot of initiative going on right now in various government, not everywhere in the world, but at least there are some good signs. ISC Square is training in high school and primary school. They even have a program for the elderly as well to help them understand how to deal with social media without being scammed by aggressive people. There are programs, Cyber for Girls as well, because I think it's important that we create a safe space for them. Boys, unfortunately, are so competitive, sometimes they are also overwhelming, and some of the shyer personality are not able to bloom in those ecosystems. So we also need, I think, to at least create safe space so they can acquire some confidence to move into, or to create this assertiveness. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm seeing the boys club and overwhelming the conversation, generally speaking, not giving enough space to either girls or young women in that field, and that's a shame because it's still 50% of the population, and it's kind of stupid of us not to try to tap in that vast pool of resources.
I'll just perhaps add 2 points. And the first, when we talk about cyber defense or cyber security, you have the impression that, well, that's for defense actors, security-related actors. Whereas really what we're seeing is that cyber is really a whole government issue. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is also bring all those stakeholders to the table. So does your Ministry of Education have cyber modules written into, for example, even junior schools or high schools? So it's really, once again, thinking of it less as a security defense sector, but more as a societal issue. How are people trained from a very young age? So once again, having this whole government approach is really important. And second, building on what Martin said, a lot of our allies are doing quite a lot of innovative work in terms of trying to attract a workforce. So picture Bastien hanging out in his basement. Would he want to then go and put on a uniform and go through the military? Would there be a career path for him in the armed forces? Or would he want to put on a suit and tie and go to the office every day? He might have all the certifications. He might be super skilled. But if he doesn't have a master's or a PhD, then where does that leave him in a domain which is non-traditional in the sense that talent comes from a variety of different places. There's not one set career path in that sense. And the minute you start asking for all of these degrees, which are important, it limits the pool of talent, where there's an expert or there's a shortage of experts. So how do you guard against that? So programs that look at, for example, hacker academies or challenges or girls competitions or youth competitions in general, really important, and there is a lot of interesting national activities going on to try to make people interested in this topic and also see themselves in this field. So it's not as rigid. So more work to be done, absolutely.
Completely agree.
One practical question, since it's a lot of, I hear a lot of abstract thoughts, but a lot of the students, they will go into the workforce applying for junior positions. So I would like to ask the panelists, if you, in your organization, your position, would have to hire a junior team, like somebody for a junior position, what would their CV look like? And what, because you're like, okay, degrees are not needed. And I'm like, well, if you look at a CV and there's no degree on it, the candidate might end up in the other pile, right? So what would you look for especially? And what are points that will totally put you off? I mean, hiring a cyber criminal for Deloitte might have worked in the past, but currently that's like, you can't put it on a CV, right? So what are you looking for practically, and how do you decide so that these people can tailor their CV onto that?
Do you want to say?
Sure. What do we look for? I think having experience in different areas, so working for a private sector, perhaps having worked as government, and even at
It's a junior position.
levels.
It's a junior position.
In internships, volunteer programs. That's how I started as well. I started as an internet major. So even having these summer programs or some experience working across private sector, academia, and international organizations if possible is really useful, because then you bring that multidisciplinary perspective. Second, the analytical basis. So experience, looking at data, looking at different sources of information and putting it together. So that's equally for the technical aspects as well as the policy. So the analytical piece. The communication skills. So having done presentations, having pitched ideas, that's something that you have to do every day, whether you're going to your boss and asking for your holidays, or whether you're working on a project where you really are pitching a new idea. Getting your point across in a compelling way is really important. So experience in developing ideas and presenting them are really important. So those three things in particular, I would say, it depends on the position, but that would be kind of the range of experience, even if at the junior level, the analytical capacity and the communications, the project development, that's important.
So actually, I think also, kind of bouncing back on what you're saying, maybe it's also about how we teach these young people how to write their CVs. So maybe it's not about, I got this degree, I got that degree, but more about the experiences and the things that they've learned. So maybe we need to kind of change the way we tell people to write CVs.
From my standpoint, I'm looking for three things. It can come across the CV or it can come across during the interview, but I'm looking for curiosity, passion, and resilience. If the person is not naturally curious, he's going to die slowly in that profession, because everything changes every 2 years or so. So if you're not willing to constantly develop yourself, you should not step in that type of position. Passion. It is a topic that is hard because you're always dealing with crises at one point in time. You're dealing with frustrated people. So you need to be passionate about your subject to be able to withhold your position and to defend it and to systematically, constantly prove the value and why it's important for the organization. And then resilience, because again, you're always almost in a crisis mode. There are issues. People don't come to you to say, oh, you're doing such an amazing job. What can we talk about today? When the phone rings, when you get an email, your first reflex is, what is going on today? Because people rarely reach out with positive inquiry or feedback. They are in trouble because they come to you from all area of the business. And if you're not capable of dealing with adversity on a day-to-day basis, cyber will be a very difficult field, for sure. So those are three things that I'm looking to see, either in the CV or during the interview, how you dealt with those things in the past, in your past life. And I don't care if it's cyber or not. Are you passionate about something? And can you transpose that passion to the career path you're trying to see?
So you would hire somebody who has been a librarian for 2 years, then switches to commercial business in 3 years. Would you hire somebody for a junior position in cyber?
Well, I love that question because indeed I did hire a librarian without cybersecurity experience and moved her into the intelligence group at Kudowski because she's been trained to structure information and to seek information, and that's what she loved. And that's what intelligence is about. And she's succeeding, and now she's head of customer success in our Secure Operations Center.
I mean, also at Deloitte, we have people from really a wide range of backgrounds, and recently we had a computational biologist join us, became a pen tester. So, you know, I think it definitely also speaks to the companies who have that open-mindedness and who are able to see these qualities in maybe non-traditional, as we would call them, backgrounds or cities. Bastian, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with my two colleagues. I think today, of course, diploma is important because it's like a key to open the door. But because of the democratization of academic studies, and I think it's a very good step. I mean, having a diploma or two is not enough. And actually, in your CV, you should put in front your soft skills and not the hard skills you learn. So for me, what's really important is also all the extracurricular activities. If someone is, I don't know, he's first done in karate, that's great. That means he can also focus, he's very resilient and stuff like that. And I see some uniform here in the room also. I mean, like, in Switzerland it's mandatory to do military services. A lot of people complain about that. But you still have the opportunity to learn something, to do something there. And if you do like a military career and an academic career at the same time, it also shows you that you're able at least to do two things at the same time. And last but not least, what I found also very important, and I joined completely Chelsea, is that communication is very important. And maybe a link with your question. For me, to learn how to speak, how to write at least one language in a good quality is very important. Because if you're not able to write an email correctly without thousands of mistakes, and you send it to someone who needs to take a decision, sorry, you can be the best expert in the world, you've lost already. And I found always really terrible if we see that a report really wrongly written, or you are not able to put your argument in the front, to underline your main point, and yeah.
We're over time, but I mean, can we continue, or? Okay, no,
So all my professors always highlight the key, or a very important aspect is to be able to communicate. And a lot of my courses also include a lot of rhetorics, but I feel like interacting with people is something you can't really read up on. You have to experience it and practice it, and competitions like this is very great for doing that. Do you have any other recommendations for or how to get better at rhetorics, how to get better at communication?
Would you like to direct this to someone in particular, or?
Whoever.
I would say find someone who you like listening to, who you're inspired by, and ask them about everything that they know. That's finding people that you really think, I like that message, I like how it's delivered, and then ask them. And that can be anybody, really. So having that mentor, finding communication style that you like, and then working towards that is really important. Two, what's also been helpful for me is if you have a presentation, if you have a big thing coming up, get your colleagues or get your friends or get your family to grill you, to really take you apart in terms of your style, in terms of how you engage, your eye contact, your messaging, everything. Because if you do that with people that you trust and that you know, okay, I can really go for it and get the feedback, that's good. So it's taking those steps then within the people that you trust, but then really improving in that sense from the feedback you're given. So the 2 points in the sense that have helped me have been find people that you're inspired by and ask them everything they know, and 2, practice.
This is Agata. I'm afraid we have to conclude here.
Sorry.
Sorry, it's so passionate, but
Thank you everybody for
Our pleasure. Thank
your
you for
questions.
organizing and sponsoring this.
Can I just show out one sentence? My cyber career really started after participating in the Cyber Student Challenge. So you're.
That's communication.